Hi everyone, welcome back to Simply Scented Life. Today I have an in-depth post-burn review for you. We are going to be taking a look at Ambered Apple and Walnut. This is one of the 6 new Fall Reserve fragrances that Kringle Candle is launching actually today, September 18th at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. So I am trying my best to get this review uploaded before the launch, but I apologize if this information gets out to you late. I've only had these candles here for about a week and I'm kind of playing catch up here. I pre-ordered 3 of the 6 new fragrances as an ambassador with Kringle, and I did share a first impressions video last week, which I will link in the description. If you are curious, I ordered this one, Fog and Embers and Forest Noir. The other 2 I have not burned enough to fully review, but I have burned some. So if you have any questions regarding those, feel free to leave it in the comment section here, and I will try to make sure I get back to you as quickly as possible and see if I can help you out there. But for today, we're going to be taking a look at this one. These will also be launching in conjunction with the Kringle Candle holiday lineup, which those I purchased all 6 and I have not burned them yet either, but I did share a first impressions video on those 6 yesterday. So all that information will be in the description, as well as the other scents in this collection. And you can find all that information that you need there. But if you are going to be shopping this launch, whether today or over the weekend, you're welcome to use my discount code Simply Scented to get yourself 15% off. That is my affiliate code, so it is commissioned. So just be aware of that if you choose to use it. And I thank you if you do choose to do so. I always appreciate that. And really that support just kind of comes right back into this channel and things like this and previews of new scents. But if you have rewards in your rewards account, make sure you check those because you may have a better deal. So always make sure you're saving as much money as possible. But that's what we've got on deck here today. We're going to talk about the scent sort of in conjunction with the performance piece for this one. Normally I separate it out, but this one it all kind of is interwoven together. So I'm going to give you what my experience has been with this candle, with this fragrance, and there's going to be a little bit of subjectivity in this review as well. So I will kind of point out to you, when I'm being a little bit subjective here and what I'm looking for in this fragrance and whatnot. But what I always tell you guys is know your instincts. If something really sounds good to you on paper, you know your preferences and you really want to try something, don't let any reviewer necessarily deter you if something really sounds good, because at the end of the day we're all going to smell these a little bit differently and we're all looking for different things. So with that said, let's dive into this review. We have top notes of sweet apple, peach, and caramel, mid notes of praline, coffee, and walnut, and base notes of buttered woods, whipped mocha, brown sugar, and amber. All right, so this fragrance has me a little bit torn, if I'm being honest. I'm not loving this the way I had hoped. And one of the things that I want to point out here with this review is that normally when I am reviewing new candles, they are fresh pours. Usually when ambassadors, when we pre-order things, like they've been poured usually within the last month or so, maybe a little bit longer. But this candle and the other 2 that I purchased in this collection were actually poured in the end of May. I have 5/29 is the date on this candle. So this candle has had a chance to kind of sit for a little bit, which I like. So I had kind of higher hopes for this to kind of come together performance-wise, especially based on the scent notes here. And I'm just not having the experience that I would have expected. And it's kind of just leaving me wanting a little bit more. Now, very subjectively speaking here, it's definitely a different take on a caramel apple, and I do think, if Kringle was just going for a sort of different take on a caramel apple fragrance, something a little bit more sophisticated and unexpected, they definitely did accomplish that with this here. It's just not necessarily, now for my own personal preference, what I am looking for, and a lot of it has to do with the apple note, and the other piece is that the apple note is kind of dominating for me and it's leaving me wanting more of those other components. And maybe Kringle intended it to kind of be that way, where the apple kind of leads and the other components are more of a background element, where the kind of caramel apple scents that you think of that are already on the market tend to lead with the caramel piece and that sweetness and more of that side of like the, well, it's all gourmand essentially, but more of that like yummy gourmand versus fruity gourmand. Those other scents like cider lane or Slatkin, Homeworks, caramel apple, like those tend to be a little bit more caramel forward, a little bit more traditional in that sense. This is kind of the other way around. So if you think about a caramel apple on a stick, the difference being if you were to bite it as is, like as pictured on this label, which is a nice yummy representation here, if you were to bite it just like that, the walnut and the caramel would hit you first with a little bit of apple in that bite. Where in this candle, for me, what I'm experiencing is that it's kind of cut off of the stick. And when you cut it off of the stick, maybe you're losing a little bit of that caramel as you're cutting it, a little bit of that nuttiness, and you have a much bigger bite now of the apple piece versus the outside goodness. And I just find myself wanting a little bit more. Let's talk about the fragrance itself though here. What I'm smelling with the apple is a very sort of tart green apple, very much in line with a Granny Smith. This did change a little bit going from cold to warm. On cold, it had a little bit more sweetness. I did say it does feel like a green apple, but there was a little bit more sweetness to it. And I think that was the peach note, because I did get a little bit of the peach on cold, but I am not getting that burning. I don't smell any peach while it's burning. I smell a very sort of tart green apple. There is a little bit of sweetness in there, like a little bit of that sweet tart kind of contrast going on. And I do think that little bit of sweetness is coming from that peach, kind of just tempering it down a little bit. But to my nose, I'm getting a lot more tartness from this candle. And I think that is kind of part of my disconnect here as well. I'm not a big green apple fan just in general. I find them a little bit too sour for my liking. And that note here is kind of putting me off just a little bit. Because the thing with it is, when I light this candle up, for the first hour or so of the burn, I get a whole lot of apple, whole lot of tart green apple, and not a whole lot else. It's not until this candle has been burning for a little while that I feel like the other notes do start to pick up a little bit. So that's where I said, like, this feels a little bit like it's not coming together. It's a little disjointed, where I want all of it together, because when it all does come together, where I get the apple with the caramel and that nuttiness and a little bit of that woods in there, when that happens, it's actually really lovely and I really enjoy it. It's just, that's not the experience I'm having throughout the burn, that's where I'm having the issue. As for the other elements here, there is a caramel component. It is not your like sweet, cloying, very rich caramel. It's more of a, it's not like that sort of artificial caramel note. This is more of like a true caramel. And it's not taking center stage like in other fragrances. It's, if you're somebody who doesn't like that heavy caramel sweetness, like Cider Lane is too cloying for you and things like that, you might actually prefer this one, because it definitely is coming across a little bit more background to me and less intense. Walnut here, we've got a walnut and a praline note. I don't get any sort of like toasted quality or anything like that from this. This is like really just a fresh chopped up walnut, and it's not, again, overly intense. It's just kind of there, kind of accenting it. And I do like that piece. It's not giving it any sort of off smell. Sometimes with praline, especially when you have praline and caramel, you get sort of a scorched, kind of burnt tone to it. I'm actually not getting that with this one at all, which I'm really happy with. But it's definitely there nonetheless. The other notes here that I'm not getting at all are coffee or whipped mocha. Those two notes I think are just kind of working as complementary scents, is kind of enhancing the other notes, where they're not really meant to be the star or standout notes. They're just kind of there working together with the other parts of this fragrance to kind of create this overall concept. But they are not standing out at all. So if you're not a coffee person, you're not a mocha person, I wouldn't let that in itself deter you, because they really don't come out very much to me, and definitely not distinctly. There is a slight bit of woodiness here, which I actually quite like. The overall fragrance here does still lean very gourmand. It's very much an edible sort of fragrance. The wood is just, again, a little bit more of like a background accent here. I kind of stand by what I said in my first impressions, where if you think about the stick of a caramel apple and you were to pull the stick out, that wood is very saturated with the apple juice and that smell of the overall apple, but you do get that hint of the wood in there with it as well. That's kind of where this fragrance goes for me as far as the woodiness. And then the amber, I know the amber is like probably the most like frightening part of this candle for gourmand lovers, is that ambered being right in the title there. It makes you feel like it's going to be a heavily sort of ambered candle, and this is not really coming across as a heavy amber note whatsoever. It's not giving it necessarily a perfuminess. It's more of like an ambery finish, which I think is where that sophistication is coming from, that makes this feel a little bit more like a fancier sort of take on a caramel apple versus like a traditional caramel apple scent. So for me, like the amber is not ruining this at all. And I'm glad I tried it despite that amber in the title, because that was really where my hang up was going into this fragrance. It's just I could think again back to that point of, I'm wanting a little bit more of that caramel and a little bit more of that nuttiness to go with that apple note. To that, also the other sort of less than thrilled portion of this candle, the performance in terms of strength has not been the best. This has been a little bit coming and going. There's moments where this candle is probably at a 5-6, which I mean is okay. It's not the greatest. There's also moments where this candle is pretty much undetectable in my space. And I will say that the apple note does seem to have a little bit more carry to it. Like when I'm up close to the candle is really the only time that I get the like that caramel, that any bit of that nuttiness, any of that going on is really when I'm in that general vicinity of that candle. But when I move away from it out into the room, when I do pick it up, it's mostly the apple note. So that coming across a little bit stronger and a little bit more dominating, in terms of the actual strength and throw, as well as in the actual scent. So guys, I would say, I mean, overall, I would probably rate this sort of 4-5, just general terms in terms of the overall strength. And then, maybe a 5-6 versus for the throw of the candle. And again, most of that throw being the apple element itself and not the overall fragrance. So I don't really know what to think with this candle. It's really, I haven't really had this experience before where it feels like it's just not cohesive enough to kind of come together and carry itself. And maybe that is just my nose. That very well could be my nose and just the way I'm perceiving this and what notes are standing out to me. But when I had this going in my home, I mean, really nobody else in my home could, pick it up other than the faint whiff of apple every once in a while. So, I'm leaning towards maybe it could be my layout, but I don't know, guys. I'm not having the best experience with this candle, and it pains me to say it because I really had high hopes for this one. And I don't want to deter those who might actually really enjoy this, because I haven't really seen the other reviews if others are reporting better experiences or better in terms of strength and more cohesive fragrance. But for me, it's not coming together, and I feel bad because I feel like there are going to be a lot of people who will like this, and it will probably work for some. It's just maybe it's a me thing, so I don't know. Take that with a grain of salt, but this for me would not be a repurchase. The burn itself has been fine. I haven't had any issues with pulling the wicks or whatsoever. I will try to turn this a little bit for you here. But I trimmed these wicks before filming, so they're nice and controlled, getting a nice even pool, and it's not especially sooty or anything like that. Always just watch your wicks and trim as needed. But I mean, the burn performance has been fine. It's just been the overall kind of package here. So that is my take on Ambered Apple and Walnut. And let me know if you have any questions. This is quick. crooked. Let me fix that. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section and I will try to answer you as soon as possible. And, I'm sorry, guys. I wish I had better things to say about this one, but it is what it is. We can't win them all. So thank you guys so much for tuning into this video. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to my channel for future content and reviews. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.